But from a Bitcoin acquisition and treasury strategy, I've built a team and a board of Bitcoin maximalists who are experts within their specific field. So people involved, the likes of Richard Byworth, there's other great names involved who I'm not sure whether I've not said to them, do you mind me mentioning your name yet? But other great pioneers in Bitcoin and experts in the space involved and making up the board. And then key strategic investors that we speak to, because of the natural business model is to make sure get best network together. We've got Adam back as a key strategic investor for us.
Yeah, as you do, casually. Scott, how you doing?
I'm good, thank you, Jordan. How are you?
Yeah, good. It's good to have you on the podcast.
It's good to be on it.
Yeah, it's we talk a lot outside and also like on our town halls or the X spaces for people that don't tune into that. You're always jumping on them, but you've actually never been on the podcast.
Wild, isn't it? Yeah, I speak to you every Wednesday at 12:30. Put it in your diaries. But yeah, I've not been on the podcast. You've not invited me on the podcast.
True, it's my fault. Well, now I can actually see your face, so it's quite nice. Yeah.
I have been previously doxed. Previously a non, and now this will be me doxed, I suppose. So yeah.
Yes, it's good to have you on, man. Because you're very much like aligned with the way that I think, and like the way like also the Bitcoin Collective is like running in the moment. Is like you've been banging that drum for UK businesses to hold Bitcoin on the balance sheet for years. Like you've been putting that message out a lot, and you're now currently in the process of taking your private company and making it public with a Bitcoin treasury. First question is, why have you chosen to do this?
Yes. First question, why have I chosen to do that? It's been a natural evolution for me. From point of view of I've ran this business for just under, I think maybe it's 12 years now. Built the business, sat there and gone, right, how do we turn this into a platform for growth? The platform for growth has resulted in growth, but I've obviously been quite an advocate for a Bitcoin balance sheet on private businesses in the UK. And you can let me run for a good couple of hours, you'll know from the spaces on why that's in my opinion, the right thing to do and the right thing for business owners to study and consider. But for me personally, the last couple of years, you've formed this business for the people in director level positions, the people in head of level positions, of managing their teams effectively. And I've had a lot more time to consider what I want to do in the future myself. And with that in mind, I've been putting Bitcoin on balance sheets from 2021. I've had the Bitcoin strategy, the business supported by the foundation of a Bitcoin strategy, but there's a massive hole in my day-to-day life in that I'm not publicly speaking about Bitcoin to clients, business associates. It's difficult, and it's always on a one-to-one basis. So I've got I suppose an ambition to help accelerate Bitcoin adoption in businesses. The best way for me to do that is to say, here's what I've been doing, here's the results, here's what we're going to do in the future. And the best way for me to make that combination of the business that I've built, I love, and I want to last forever, to continue doing that, is to move from being private to public in both aspects of life. So I'm quite private in Bitcoin. You know who I am. Anybody I've met face to face at a conference knows who I am. I don't mind saying what my name is. I don't mind saying what the business is. But on X, it's been private. So that will move from private to public. And then business-wise, we will move from private and intending to move to public and go forward from there, which I think it allows a business to do good and to help us become stronger, or me become a stronger, the business become a stronger advocate for Bitcoin powered businesses, especially in the UK.
Yeah, the UK definitely needs it, and more just Bitcoin. I mean, well, that's the reason why the Bitcoin Collective focuses on businesses, is businesses running Bitcoin strategies, but then also that public awareness by like public companies then talking about Bitcoin and getting out there around what they are doing around their strategy. We're going to dive into all of this, but let's strip it like right back. Like let's go back to like, what is the business current, or what is the core business, Spencer Riley?
Yeah, so core business, we're an international executive recruitment company. So for people unfamiliar with that type of business model, the first however long of my career, and everybody in that business, their role is to understand every business that we're speaking to in detail, what its history is, what its future is, and then help secure good people in the positions that they need to drive that business forward. People might not be familiar with our business model if you've not worked in this industry before, but to sort of break it down into its absolute core, international executive recruitment, might be called international executive search. The word that I probably wouldn't use, and I'm not a particular fan of, is a headhunting business, but it communicates what it actually is. Now, people don't move for money, they move for other motivations, and they move for they move to fulfill something outside of just monetary moving. It's not a case of, you're offering people more money to move jobs. That's just very, very rarely, if ever, is the main driver for someone making a move. So
that's surprising. Like,
yeah, it usually is for people outside of the industry, but
what would be what are some like drivers?
To give you the main drivers for it. Yeah. The main motivation for someone moving position is frustration or ambition. There's a lifestyle as well. But if someone's happy in their role, they're happy in their role, and they're just not going to leave the position. If someone's not happy in their role, then what is it they're not happy about in their position? And you'll go through that in a conversation with someone, because ultimately we're looking for the best result for the client and the candidate. It's one of them few roles where the candidate won't hand a notice in, leave a position and join a new role unless they're absolutely right about it. It's one of the biggest decisions they'll make in their life. And a client won't make an offer unless they're absolutely certain that it's right. So it's got to be right for both sides. And a lot of emotion is involved in that decision. So everything has to line up. So if someone's happy in their position and we're speaking to them proactively and confidentially, seeing whether they're open to making a move, that's great to hear. The chances are they might be hiring themselves, and the chances are also that they're very good at their role, and they will know a lot of people in the industry who might be putting us onto the person who they know is a little bit more frustrated, and that might be the candidate. So we speak to a lot of people. So the business model, if you like, if you take it right back to when I started the company, and it's me, is either right back at the start when it's just me, or if you're a consultant and you're coming into the industry, is the best way to explain the business model. So let's imagine you've got no clients and you're starting out. What you will want to do there to be able to approach new clients and engage with them on a level where they may be interested in a conversation and it may result in the start of a business relationship, is find a very strong, exceptionally a commercially beneficial candidate who's frustrated, wants to move, but wants to do it confidentially. So if you imagine a vice president of sales who's managing a significant portfolio of clients, but a private equity firm's just come in and bought the business and made drastic changes, changed to who they're reporting into. They don't want to stick their hand up and say, I'm not happy about any of this and I don't like where the company's going. but they know they want to leave. They might have a confidential conversation with a consultant in our business and say, look, I'm frustrated with this. This is why. This is what I've done. These are my experiences. These are the value that I can add to another business in the future. And this is what I'd be open to looking at if you've got the right kind of role or you find the right kind of role. And from there, you will agree with that candidate that you'll proactively and confidentially have conversations in the market to see whether you can identify the right role for them. So you'll work exclusively with a candidate and approach clients with the message that I'm working confidentially with someone, they're open to a move, they work within a competitor of your business. This is what value that they add, the value that they add to that business. Would you be interested in having a confidential conversation with that person? You might speak to 10 companies through that period and you're speaking to the CEOs, and your role every time is to start the interest because you've got something that may be valuable to them now or in the future. Understand their business in detail, understand the human in detail and their motivations, understand where they want to take the business into the future, and then just identify whether that candidate is going to be a suitable conversation for them to have, or whether there's other opportunities for you to work with them. So you approach them with the vice president of sales and they say, this is great. I like how much detail you've gone into. I like the service, but we need a vice president of operations in a different country. So you've secured your first client. So you take the brief of a vice president of operations in Southeast Asia or North America, and then your role is you'll be agreeing to be paid a smaller portion of the fee up front, and then you'll be tasked with completing the project. So you'll speak to every vice president of operations in North America who is right for that role, and just simply identifying whether they're open to looking at a move or not, interviewing them in detail, managing everybody's expectations from start to finish. And ultimately, your job is to find the best person who's open for the role on behalf of the client, bring the deal together, make sure everybody's happy, and then sort of hold that person's hand and guide that process as they onboard in the business and build a long-term relationship. So the business, we work more than, and because of the intention to go public, everything I say has been verified, and we go through all the details of the due diligence. So is that, so I believe it was more than 60% last year, but it's easier for me to say circa 50% of our revenue is international and from North America, Europe, Middle East. We work across a number of different markets, quite sector. We're sector specific, niche specific per consultant, per team, but as a business, we're quite resilient in that we've got a construction engineering division, but when COVID starts and that takes an immediate drop, the life sciences division and the logistics division is going up. And the facilities management, obviously contract cleaning, all that kind of stuff on big buildings in New York or wherever it might be, that takes a bit of a down as well. But then the safety wear and safety manufacturers is going up. So we've been very fortunate in the resilience of the business there, and it is geared that way. But we work across facilities management, logistics, life sciences, construction and engineering, professional services. So can say we have KPMG, PwC, Deloitte as clients of the business, but they're not a large portion of our revenue. They would probably be opposed to me saying they're not necessarily the swiftest businesses to work with either. If you're working with the CEO of a privately held company who wants the vice president of sales and has got a future for the business, but they're like, this is what we need, they're going to act a lot quicker in the process, the decision making, and the meals between the candidate and the CEO are going to be a lot more engaging. It's a lot more emotive process than if it's a transfer pricing director for international tax at one of the big four. So it's a resilient business, geographically resilient and industry resilient as well. I hope that sums it up, Gordon, from the point of view of what we do. But if you're going to go ahead.
No, it does, and it's good to have like the real world like examples as well, and like how the process actually works. And then like how big is the team there?
So there's 13 people through the office now. So you'll have teams led by one with a few people in the team, and they'll be focused on their niches. So yeah, 13 high performing staff. And there's a lot of businesses like ours in this city. If we're competing for a position in the USA with a new client, quite often it'll be a company that I know in Leeds that are also speaking to that client to compete for the business. And most of the businesses are privately owned SMEs with 1 or 2 majority shareholders. And they're all between 5 and 25 staff. So it's quite an epicenter globally, Leeds. And it has come from, it came from, I think the first recruitment companies that acted in executive search on permanent placement roles, I believe, started in Leeds. And then there was a large, well-known at the time. You're not going to be aware of it, but I think it was one of the biggest management buyouts that happened in this industry was in Leeds, and a lot of companies spawned off that. So a lot of the directors will have set up their own businesses, and it just became quite a hub for it. So it's lively when it comes to our industry in this city.
Yeah, that's interesting. That it's such an epicenter. And then so your name's Scott Ellam. Where does Spencer Riley come into play?
Okay, so I mentioned it was just coming up to 12 years ago. Obviously, I'm starting a business, and I'll have been 20. I'm guessing here at the ages, but I think I'll have been about 24. Just turning. Yeah, so I'm 24 years old. Prior to starting the business, I've worked in the industry, and when I came into the industry, I don't mind saying it, I was a very high performing consultant in quite a short amount of time, and it wasn't due to anything that's a secretive method. I've just grown up extremely inquisitive with people, especially if there's somebody who's got a business and it's doing very well. As a youngster, I'd be, so how did you start? What do you do? How do you do that? How do you do that? And it was just, how about this? And I remember work experience at school, like for the best local business owner, like, what, you've gone around and knocked on his door and said, can I do work experience at your place? Yeah, I have, yeah. I'm doing it there. And I'd started in the industry, and I think just asking people what they do, what their story is, and where they want to go helped me in my early stage of my career get very good relationships with the people who were then coming back to me and saying, here's an opportunity to work on for us. Here's an opportunity to work on for us. And shortly into my career, I was approached by a really good client I'd won and secured, who'd offered me a role to help him not just recruit, but buy companies. And then after a period of time in that position, I decided I was going to set up by myself on my own. And it was more of a born of frustration in that I didn't have enough to do. We ran out of steam. We'd acquired a business, and it was don't worry about doing anything, Scott. Just relax. And that didn't suit me. I was wanting to be doing more. And I said, well, I've got plenty of time on my hands. How about I make a couple of calls externally and see whether I can generate some business? And I did. And it was within sort of 24 hours. The night before Spencer Riley was registered was my first phone call to a candidate and a client.
Wow.
And they met the day after at 11 o'clock in the morning. I didn't think it was going to go anywhere. And then they negotiated a fee in the afternoon, and I didn't have a business registered. I'd just made 2 calls really. So I went to a pub that evening, and we discussed registering a business in the morning with a few friends who were in the pub, and they were setting up a watch brand. I won't say which it is, but if you imagine Swedish first name, British second name, there was quite a few watches came out a few years ago in that manner, and they were picking names just based on it sounding cool. And I said, well, I need to name this business. And I didn't, at the time, I didn't know I'd be sat here more than a decade later with the reputation we've got with clients around the world and staff in the office. But the name Jordan was the surname of someone I was having a pint with that evening, Riley. And he lives in China, and we didn't know each other particularly well. We just drank in the same pub. And I've moved to the area now. So that's the back end of the name. The front end of the name was they were suggesting pick a cooler sounding European name at the front. And when I got to the accountant's office, the cool sounding European name was taken, and the accountant, who was the chairman of a football club at the time because he represented some extremely rich overseas owner of a football club who'd been asked to not be a director of a Premier League team. The guy was quite an eccentric accountant who had been introduced to by some really good people, and he sort of turned around to me and he just put his hand there while he was on the phone to HMR, company's house registering the business, and just said, Spencer Riley. And I went, okay. And that was born. And then it was a project for me to develop that business from there, because it was me. And as the years went by and it became me and others and me and others and me and others, it kind of got adopted by everybody, and everybody liked it. It stuck, and it's here today.
That's so funny. Yeah, you just never think about, in the early days when it's going so fast like that, you never really think like, oh yeah, I will be, when it gets to that stage of, yeah, when we're taking it public, and all of this, like, you just don't think about that.
Well, that never crossed my mind, no. It was more, will this be in existence in 12 months? Okay. Yeah.
That's so funny. Honestly, I love hearing like the backstories of people's, how the name came about and everything. Yeah. It's so good. But yeah, tell me about so you said you started putting Bitcoin on your balance sheet in when did you say 2020?
2021 was where I started using a Bitcoin balance sheet strategy. Yeah.
Nice. And yeah, tell me like
reserve. Yeah.
Tell me about like how you got to that, to then putting into your business. You probably want to then take me like backstory around like personal side of things first, because it always personal.
So you've got a couple of years as a private business owner under my belt in my early years, in my 20s. And I had an intuition for the problem from a very young age. So I knew I knew there was a problem. I kind of thought, I think I might know what it is, because you've got family members saying, everybody's borrowing loads of money and it's all going to blow up. This is going to be a bubble. Blah, 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 blah. And then you're the first sort of, I'm going to say first person in my family to own business, but my mum had a hairdresser, so she will kill me if I said that. And my grandma, and my granddad had a...
Just get that in there.
Yeah. So I'm aware of the problem, and I grew up seeing property as the store of value. You're 13 years old and you're thinking, why am my family not buying properties, lending money, and letting other people pay the mortgages off and using it as a store of value? You've got a sense that the money's not increasing in value.
But and then, how did you have this at 13 years old though?
I was an odd child. I dragged my mum to something called, I won't say the name because it might be, but one of these property seminars and quickly spotted in it that it was not for me, i.e. it was signing up to the course. The people who were running it, I said I was an inquisitive youngster. I'm sat with my mum at the property event, and they'd done something that to me looked quite early, pre sort of me knowing what shitcoinery is. It looked quite shitcoinery to me. And I started asking the person who was asking us to sign up, how many properties do you own? And he was backtracking. And I thought, oh, I've got him. I'm like, how many do you own? And he couldn't answer a question. I was like, how many? And it turned out he had, a small share of one, and he's selling us the idea, like, this guy's not an expert. We're going home, Mum. So I've got the business going, and we're 2 years into the business, and I'm running a business, and I'm acutely aware of the problems that you then come into face, which is personal store of value. That's my issue at the time. I didn't own a house. So how do I lock in the value to what I'm getting as a benefit of building a business that's profitable? How do I lock in that value for a later date when I'm ready to buy a house? So I'm looking at stores of value, and it's 2 years after that. It's not a problem, but you're aware of the problem. 2 years after that, I get introduced to Bitcoin 2016, and three things stand out to me straight away. 21 million fixed supply cap. Unconfiscatable. Send anywhere in the world. And in 2016, my immediate thoughts are, okay, if these 3 points are true, this is going to be unbelievably game-changing. Not many people are speaking about it, but if these 3 points are true, then every person who needs to secure their money, whether that's at the time, I'm sort of rudimentary thinking here. I'm thinking anybody who's potentially going to get divorced in the future is going to want to buy some of these. Any Russian oligarch who wants to move to Monaco is going to buy some of these. Any F1 driver who needs to move to a tax-free jurisdiction is going to buy some of these. The price is going to go up. And then my thinking's developing, but there's not much educational material available for someone like me who's not a Twitterer at the time or anything like that. So you're doing as much as you can to find good sources of information and developing your thinking yourself. And that's my Bitcoin journey of understanding it. I'd like to say I didn't have the shitcoining experience because due to the earlier experiences when I mentioned sort of my young years of it intuitively sort of thinking, I don't feel comfortable with that. Every time someone spoke to me about something along their lines, my immediate view was someone else has set it up, or a business has set it up, and they've set it up to profit from it. I'm not interested. I'm looking no further. And if you take it one step further than that, the technological aspect of it, in them years, without the material available, without knowing where the material was, making an on-chain transaction was a pretty daunting experience. So I didn't fancy working out how to do it with a different coin. And I was using it purely as a store of value. So I didn't have a motivation to look into the stuff. And I was running a business. I didn't have the time. So then we get to 2020, and everything I've been thinking, it becomes very obvious I haven't been thinking deeply enough. I haven't been convicted enough, and I haven't understood the wider picture of Bitcoin. Because when we had Rishi Sunak, every president and prime minister around the world came out and spoke, and I heard the message from each one of them. The message I clearly heard was, we will never allow another Lehman Brothers style economic collapse in your lifetimes, because we're admitting right now that we can just debase the currency, print more money, and if we need to, we can tell you to sit at home and we'll just send it to you. And I remember when they got to an out, it was just they've just opened Pandora's box. this is Bitcoin's moment. The Bitcoin standard is happening. I'm all in. Where's the information? And you're on the deep, deep dives throughout that period. So that was me going from Bitcoin is great to fix the money, fix the world, mining, all the other aspects of it are all sinking in for me now, and I'm there. I'm a maximalist. Bitcoin only Scott is born. And it was shortly after that. One of my favorite podcasts I listened to was the one where Michael Saylor was being orange pilled. I don't want to name the other person who's on the podcast because I sometimes get them mixed up to one or two other people. But there was one where he was being orange pilled, and it was fascinating. And shortly after, they announced that they'd bought Bitcoin on their balance sheet as a public entity. So as soon as they did that, I thought, this is a solution I've been waiting for. I've built a cash reserve. Since the start of a business, I've built a cash reserve, and I've can't say never touched it. I've held a cash reserve that has been there to support the business should we see tougher times in the future at any point. And that cash reserve has always been a worry and a problem because every year I'm watching it devalue in purchasing power. And you're topping it up and you're thinking, well, it used to be when you started the business, it used to be this much. But that doesn't buy very much anymore. Now it's this much, and that's not going to buy very much in a few years' time either. And it's going down in value. My gut feeling felt like 10% a year. So you do what other private business owners do, and you think, how do you move the money into something that's a store of value? And a lot of them choose property. But a business like mine, which is a service-based business, a people-based business, can't tie up its future savings in property and not be able to meet short-term demands should something like 2020 happen. So the natural conclusion was the long-term store of value is Bitcoin, and I just put it straight onto the strategy. We're having a Bitcoin balance sheet. It's accumulate as much as you can, as fiscally responsibly as you can. And that is our primary reserve asset. And that will allow the business to have the time and confidence and balance sheet to last forever, in my opinion. And it allows you to sort of make decisions with a longer term time frame. I didn't envisage being in the conversation I'm having now where it's, okay, now we're going accelerate. But yeah, that was the that was the thesis. And I believe that thesis is still right today.
Yeah. And like, honestly, we're seeing so many more private businesses realize the same around their cash. And like, why are they holding such large amounts of cash for such a long period of time? And realizing what that problem is, because that's the main thing is you look at like what the problem is, and then you're looking for solutions.
Yeah.
Like, all the business owners I've been speaking to, it's like, yeah, we also looked at property, but it's very illiquid.
Illiquid in that a risk.
And yeah, it's like you whittle it down and you end up at, oh, okay, Bitcoin is actually the most sensible thing that I should be holding on my balance sheet. What's been so you started this strategy in 2021. Like, what's been your strategy like ever since? Is it just like dollar cost averaging in, or like when you get a certain amount of profit, like you then put it in? Like, what's been how have you been doing it?
It's buy as much as you can and hold. So like we're intending to IPO, so I'm making very little changes to our holdings right now. But if we weren't, we've had a let's say hypothetically we've had a good period. Money comes in, there's a surplus to what is now the reserve, fiat. And the reserve fiat will have a shorter time frame than it used to do, to meet the demands of an operating business. And then any surplus to that, if we're able to, if we have a surplus in there, it'll be allocated to Bitcoin, should there be no expectation of that being needed in the short term. But over that 4-year period, it's been buy as much as we can. Now, just imagine, I think 2021, if you look back at the price, we started the strategy when it was probably, I think, 40,000 when I look at the first buys. And then it went up to £50,000. And you can see me doing the same as what everybody does when they personally start adopting Bitcoin, again, as a business, which is your thesis is this will go up forever, and you're buying up to 51. Now, we all know that came right down to 16,000 British pounds and then back up over a longer period than we anticipated. But because my conviction was so high at the start, it didn't bother me in the slightest. And we moved from, okay, we've made a sizable allocation there. We need to be buying this every day. And I remember setting up a daily buy, which turned into,
wow.
Yeah, which turned into, let's have a look at what's the optimal way of doing this rather than a daily buy due to fees and things and the size of the buys being.
Bet your accountants hate
that. Trust me, when you're intending to IPO and they're doing an audit, they hated it. Can you show us all your purchases? Yeah, I can. Yeah, here's a 1,000 tab long spreadsheet for you. We've done this every day. Thereabouts. So dealing with 0 decimal points as well, Paul. So yeah, but it's been a buy consistently and buy as much as you can strategy. So it turned into sort of weekly buys. So it's been a mixture of daily, weekly purchases over that period. And when I presented to the staff, because I told the staff about the Bitcoin strategy that we've had this year and presented to them, and I'd pre-prepared them for all this and sort of managed expectations. So I'd done a presentation to them the year before where we'd gone through asset classes. We'd gone through the history of money, asset classes, and ended on a comparison between the S&P, gold, and Bitcoin. And the way I'd done the chart was from the £51,000 top, which was the top for the S&P and the top for gold and the top for Bitcoin as well. And as you looked at that chart, we'd done a dollar cost average of the same amount of each asset. And as Bitcoin got back to, I think I did the presentation in February, and I think the price had reached back to £33,000. If you dollar cost average through that period, Bitcoin was the best performing long-term store of value from 2021 to then. And people couldn't really wrap their head around that. They were looking at me kind of, well, gold's worth more today than it was then. S&P's worth more today than it was then. Bitcoin's worth £20,000 less than it was then. How's it outperformed? So what if you're buying every day, this is the result. So I've kind of coached the team to understand it, and I'd obviously in 2021 you're having conversations with your management accountants and me, the person in the business who knew my executive assistant and our operations manager, who is the most knowledgeable person on the business at that time and understands all the aspects of the business. And the management accountants are looking at me saying, how do we account for it? Are you sure this is a good strategy? Are you sure you know what you want to do with this? And you're kind of looking at them, as Bitcoiners will all know too well, sort of saying, if you were advising me on how to build a property portfolio and you couldn't explain what a property was, you'd never bought one, and you didn't know how it worked, would I be taking your advice? Do you know what I mean? It's tough to take. It's tough to consider the advice in the conversation in a serious manner. But my conviction was so dealt with by that point that it was more a case of coaching them to understand it, and they understood it, and then moving forward and just delivering a strategy.
What I'm interested now, like where are the team at with, so you're obviously planning to IPO and take the business public. Where are the team at now with that? Like, and I guess they don't really need to understand Bitcoin because they're part of the operating business, but do you all have had to walk them through, like, this is this is what we're doing, and like, how's that been?
Yeah, it was a series of presentations with them, but there was you're right, there's good questions. The team are extremely excited and motivated, and I think that comes from probably some of the interests that are actually coming into businesses that are Bitcoin treasury companies, because you don't need the technical understanding of Bitcoin. All them fears dissipate because it's kind of within, and people do, like some people in traditional finance and business, the thing that stopped them adopting Bitcoin is the self-sovereignty of it. That's the barrier to entry for them quite often. So for these, it's a chance for them to be part of a Bitcoin-powered executive recruitment company, doing the role that they're good at, that they've always been good at, continuing in the exact same manner for them, with the added benefit of there'll be a small, I'd say small, it's significant for everybody in the business, but if you imagine you create, say, I think it'll be just under 5% allocation for an EMI share scheme pool, and then a small allocation of that will be portioned to existing staff to be able to give them the opportunity to perform highly and earn long-term share incentives. So for them, there's just an additional benefit with this business now that you won't get in any of the other businesses in the area or in the industry.
Such an incentive for you as a business as
personal performance. So it's linked to, like, you hit your number, this is what you'll get in 12 months. You hit the number over the 3 years, this is what you'll get in 3 years. And they'll be able to watch, they'll be engaged in the share price, because the share price is a reflection of what they're going to earn based on their hitting target, developing revenue, developing profit for the business. And that profit goes back into Bitcoin. So it's a self-fulfilling sort of, I believe the operating business will grow as a direct result of the Bitcoin strategy, because there's talent retention and motivation. But on top of that, problem people face in this industry is attracting good talent, because a lot of the businesses, as I described, are very similar businesses, but there'll be high-performing staff in there. And what's the motivation for them to move? Well, now this business has separated itself, so I believe we will become a magnet for high-performing talent to want to come into a business, join us on the journey, whether they're Bitcoiners or not. They're looking at long-term share incentives, and ours is the closest industry to the values of Bitcoin. Everybody tends to be in our industry, you tend to see lower basic salaries, high commissions and earnings based on performance. So you deliver this, you receive this. And now we've got the added accelerator by being Bitcoin powered of EMI pools. Okay, you deliver that, this is what you'll receive. So they're excited.
That's such a strong,
and I believe that other people will as well. I believe it will allow us to,
so too.
The Bitcoin strategy will be an aggressive Bitcoin strategy. The Bitcoin treasury side of it, aggressive Bitcoin accumulation, increasing Bitcoin per share. But the operating business will also be there to, as a result of that, attract growth and ideally support the DCA in and all that side of it as well.
Yeah.
So both aspects are not correlated in some respect, if you get what I mean.
Yeah.
If construction recruitment's going up and Bitcoin's going down in prices, it's not likely that it's going to be outperforming Bitcoin, don't get me wrong, but you get what I mean. If there's a drawdown or a crab market, then the operating business continues to grow.
Yeah. And then like, I would say I want to dive more into like the Bitcoin strategy side of things. And like, because there is now, there's more public treasury companies popping up, especially in the UK. So like, how will you and like how will Spencer Riley like differentiate yourself? Like that's already one side of it that you've said around the operating side of it. But how will you differentiate yourself going in, becoming a public company that's then raising more Bitcoin for the treasury?
Yeah. Okay. Well, our strapline from the earlier years, can't remember what year this strapline came in, is connecting excellence. That's our role, is connecting excellence. The business will come under the group topco of XCE, connecting excellence. So to sort of get to the Bitcoin strategy aspect, the business is geared to find the best talent for the right roles and build the best teams. And I believe that I'll talk to you about another aspect of this business that will help people in Bitcoin, not in Bitcoin, but Bitcoiners in chief investment officer roles, chief financial officer roles, find a bridge to bring them into the traditional sector. But from a Bitcoin acquisition and treasury strategy, I've built a team and a board of Bitcoin maximalists who are experts within their specific field. So people involved, the likes of Richard Byworth, there's other great names involved who I'm not sure whether I've not said to them, do you mind me mentioning your name yet? But other great pioneers in Bitcoin and experts in the space involved in making up the board. And then key strategic investors that we speak to, because of the natural business model is to make sure get best network together. We've got Adam Back as a key strategic investor for us.
Yeah, as you do, casually.
Yeah, not casually.
He just dropped it in there.
Yeah.
Wow.
So you've got they're the names, I think, from an involvement point of view. Would be happy for me to sort of put that out on these early stage conversations. But Richard Byworth, Adam Back, and you can probably imagine just from saying them two names, that allows me not to need to go into the detail I need to go into to really go through the stuff that we are yet to, as I'm recording this, put into the public domain, if you like. So I can tell you that the Bitcoin acquisition strategy will be aggressive, fiscally responsible, and that our objectives are to hit the numbers that, I see Bitcoin per share, number one metric. The other aspects of looking at, okay, what are the financial tools that we've got in place and how beneficial and valued aligned are they with shareholders and investors, and making sure that everybody's aligned. So the values of the business are aligned, the values of the board are aligned, the values for the shareholders, all them aspects are aligned. So we've got some great names involved as a result of that. And the proof of work over the last 4 years, it's not the fact that this is an international executive recruitment firm that tends to get hold of people who they need to get hold of when an opportunity is right for that person and identifying it's right for that person. It's a combination of that and the proof of work being able to give them the comfort and the credibility that I'm not a CEO having this conversation because it sounds like a new good idea. I'm having this conversation because I've got 4 years of history of running a Bitcoin strategy behind me, and I believe I've got 40 years in front.
How do you see the crossover because you said chief Bitcoin officer, and like that's something that I've talked about a lot before, and like I know has come up on like our town halls as well.
This is yeah. Go ahead, sorry.
No, you're
I'm
you're
too
ready to
excited
go.
about
Do
that
it.
as well. Yeah.
Go for it.
So the marrying between most of us have been through this. You're probably extremely a rare case in that you seem to have been in Bitcoin full time for a long time. But most people like me are in roles as their fiat. This is my role. This is my focus. This is what I'm doing, and are unable to breach the subject of Bitcoin. So if you're a chief investment officer, you're a chief financial officer, you're in a senior sales leadership position, you're in a senior technical position, and you're a Bitcoiner, most Bitcoiners, first thing we think about when we wake up in the morning is Bitcoin. Last thing you think about when you're going to bed is Bitcoin.
We just don't tell our wives and girlfriends or boyfriends and husbands that.
Yeah. Mine might disagree with you on that. Right, family gathering again. Scott put PowerPoint away. That's what we think about, because we know that the long-term result and the benefits to society and to our family and to our friends and to our competitors and to our allies in business, the benefits to all of them and the solutions to the ills of society, you can draw all of them back to Bitcoin helps that. And the sound money future is what we all want to see. But if you're spending the majority of your time in a role that doesn't allow you to express that, join that cause and push that cause further forward, that can be a stressful place to be and an unfulfilling place to be. And when we go right back to the start of our conversation about motivations, that is a huge motivating factor for people to look for a new role. I said money isn't important to people making new roles, Jordan. When the role is important to them, when the mission is important to them, when the why of getting a better future for society is so strong and so powerful, people won't be asking what the salary will be. And a lot of Bitcoin businesses are startup businesses. They'll be asking what the mission is. That'll come later.
Honestly, sorry to interrupt you, but the amount of people that are coming to me over the past, I want to say 6 months, but there's probably been a lot more within the last like 2 months of, obviously, because I run the podcast, we've got Bitcoin Collective and everything like that. People ask me, like, is there opportunities and stuff? Like, the amount of people that have been doing that and either saying like, oh, I've even quit my job because it didn't align with what I was doing. I know that. But like some have said that, and then others have been like, I'm not happy and I want a Bitcoin role. And it's actually insane. And like now we've got like a founder messaged me the other day of like a Bitcoin company founder, and he was like, we're looking for this role. Do you know anyone? And I did know someone for that role. So I linked them up. But the guy who wanted the role was unhappy in his current job.
Experienced,
and
good enough.
He wants Bitcoin.
Wants the mission. Wants. That's what we'll find. And we'll see that increasing over the next 3 to 5 years. What we want to build is we've got a reputation for delivering good results, excellent results, and connecting excellent people to excellent opportunities. So what we want to build is, we're not saying this division is going to be the fastest growing division or anything along those lines, but we want to build a place and a home for people who are in traditional roles at the experience level that aligns with our business's expertise, to come for a confidential conversation and say, here's my background, here's what I'm doing. I'm a Bitcoiner. I'd like to find my place in the Bitcoin ecosystem and the Bitcoin world. And if we build that network now, the same founder you're talking about probably called me in the last week or two. I know. So we never disclose clients, candidates, unless we have their permission to do so. So people can feel comfortable having the conversation with us and knowing that we know they've give us the signal. And when a client comes to us and says, this is what I'm looking for, they know we know their background well enough to give them a call when it's appropriate for them. And I think that'll build up over the next 3 to 5 years. And chief Bitcoin officers, heads of Bitcoin strategy, these kind of roles aren't just going to be in the Bitcoin treasury companies. They're going to be every type of Bitcoin business. And then by, I believe, 5 years, they're going to be in every business. The FTSE 100, the NASDAQ, the S&P 500, every single business in those indexes will at some stage in the future need to consider hiring someone with an expertise in Bitcoin. We work globally, connect people to the right opportunities. I would like this business to form a reputation around the world that that's a specialism that we deliver. And it won't cost us, it's very little cost for us to start developing that. It's builds a database with the people who asked to be on the database and then match them with the client. It's easier than what we usually do, probably. What we usually do is take a role and then identify the right people, approach the right people, bring them. This one, I believe, will be people just saying, here's my hands up, here's my background, let me know when it comes. So I think that's an unbelievably positive growth strategy for business. Yes, but it's for why. And nothing could fulfill me more than placing chief Bitcoin officers with the top 100 businesses in every country around the world. And I don't think there'd be anything better to do from a business perspective in helping adoption. So
yeah,
I'm excited.
Yeah, and it makes so much sense of like that you've got the operating business and then the Bitcoin strategy as well. And to then have that link that like almost helps the Bitcoin adoption as well. Like you'll be aggressively buying Bitcoin.
Yes.
But then you're actually helping adoption with the recruitment side of things as well, which I think is, very unique.
It's symbiotic, if you like, in that everything works together and complements each other, but not just complements, accelerates each other aspect. So, I firmly believe, Jordan, that I'm happy to speak to other businesses about Bitcoin. I've introduced people to you and you've introduced people to me. A business is saying we'd like to think about a Bitcoin strategy. And the first thing is study Bitcoin, be allocated themselves and understand it themselves, because you need to study Bitcoin to understand the stresses of a high allocation in a drawdown period and all that kind of stuff. So it needs to be right for each individual business. But by having this strategy here and helping other businesses, I actually believe that the business model we've got here, it fits very well from a connections point of view and putting chief Bitcoin officers in. But it's a replicable business model for other industries as well. There's lots of privately owned businesses in the UK that are just cash generating people businesses, marketing businesses, PR businesses, accountancy businesses, legal businesses. And strategy is very replicable for them. So I probably don't have the time to speak to them, or I'm focused on building our Bitcoin treasury. But
I'll
we can work together to give you the playbooks and say, here you go.
Yeah. Honestly, so it's cool to see how that all links up, and it's different, which is what I quite like. Man, it's honestly been so good chatting through, like, and hearing that you're taking the company from private to public, and like I can't even imagine like how much It's hard enough running a private company.
You can't. But it's been, everything about it's been fun and enjoyable and fast paced and high levels of new skills, new learning, all that kind of stuff. From the point of view of the detail and the hiring of an IPO process, yeah, that's been great learning curve, and met some great people on the way on that. And from the point of view of the other aspects of it, I've spent my career, the start of a career in my 20s, calling the CEOs of businesses and private owners and ultra high net worth individuals to say, have a conversation, understand what their background is, what their needs are going forward, and then asking them to pay money, sizable money upfront, on the promise that we'll go out and work as hard as we possibly can to get them the best result we possibly can. So I've really enjoyed the aspects that will be at the forefront of my role running the business going forward. I enjoy the conversations with the investors, and I really look forward to more.
Yeah, it's going to be exciting to see where it goes. I don't know what I can and can't say. I from the understanding is a planned IPO.
You are intending to IPO is the phrase.
And yeah, no, it's good to see more. Like, as people know, like, I've had quite a few treasury company CEOs on the podcast, and I'm a big supporter of what it does for just adoption of Bitcoin in general, because I've seen the effects of it, of people that had no interest in Bitcoin at all, coming to me and saying, what is this treasury? What is this treasury company? What are they doing? And then it's like forcing them to actually, oh, okay, well, I should probably be looking into Bitcoin and why it's actually doing this. And these are people I just didn't expect to actually be asking those questions. So, yeah, well, first of all, my hat off to you for taking that step and taking it public. And I'm so excited to see like where you take it, and then obviously like the chief Bitcoin aspect and the recruitment side of it, like that's exciting as well, because it just helps Bitcoin adoption, and like that's kind of why I'm here.
And it sounds like you've got some good candidates and clients to pass our way as well, Jordan.
JD.
I'll let the team know. All right.
Awesome, man. Thank you so much for jumping on. And I'll put all your details in the description below for everyone to tune in and follow along.
Awesome to see you. Thanks for having me, Jordan.
Yeah, likewise,
and
man.
I'm sure we'll speak soon. And drop the details in. I'd love to speak to the people as well.
Awesome.
All right.
Bye.